Welcome to The Hypnotist, the show that gives you inside access to cutting-edge hypnosis with real clients facing genuine issues. Brought to you by the hypnotherapist demanded by celebrities, CEOs, and even royalty, Adam Cox. These recordings took place live from Adam's clinic in London's world-famous Harley Street. This podcast features powerful hypnosis, so do not listen while driving or operating machinery. This recording is not suitable for those with epilepsy or severe mental health issues. So, get yourself comfortable and enjoy today's episode of The Hypnotist.
Hi, it's Adam here, and in this episode of The Hypnotist, you'll be listening to a hypnosis session that I created for a client based in the States who was continuing to smoke even though they had a cancer diagnosis. And, you know, for me, this highlights the level of addiction and also reconfirms what I consider to be a useful definition of addiction. And a useful definition of addiction is that you're doing something that is detrimental in some way. It could be detrimental to your health, your relationships, your finances. You're doing something that's detrimental, and even if you want to quit and stop doing that, you can't. That is a useful definition of addiction. If you love doing something, if you love gambling and you've got enough money to gamble, it doesn't really affect your life, it's not harming anyone, it's not really an addiction. Even if it's something that you couldn't really stop, as long as it's not detrimental, I can't really see an issue with that. So there's two key things that really make it important for me to feel like my skill set would be useful to help. The first is that it's damaging them or other people around them in some way, and they can't just quit of their own devices. Because of course, if they could, why see, a therapist? Why see, some kind of addiction specialist? Doesn't make any sense. So in her case, she had a period of time, 2 periods of time actually, that she had quit smoking successfully. One was when she was pregnant. So she effectively didn't smoke throughout the pregnancy, even though she wanted to. So that wasn't the right emotional state to access. And then another time, for a single day, she had no desire to smoke whatsoever. So I became very curious about that particular day. And then I said, what led you to actually smoking, even though you had no desire to? And what it was is that there was a particular trigger of her feeling so stressed, so overwhelmed, that she felt that she needed to, and that was her language, that I had to do it to cope. So what was evident is that she had a belief system, and that belief system was that she needed to smoke to deal with life's struggles. It turned out when we dug a bit deeper that wasn't the case. It wasn't the case that she needed to smoke. It's that she felt like she needed to smoke to deal with the stress. So I honed in and I said, what does that feeling feel like? And to her, it felt like a ball was being squeezed right in the center of her chest, and it felt pressure. And the release of that was smoking. Now, this was very subtle feelings, but, if anyone had a feeling of a part of their body being squeezed, and they could release that, that's going to provide that positive reinforcement to keep doing, the alternative, even if it's not that healthy for you. So in this session, although it's kind of linked to smoking cessation, it's actually more linked to tapping into a feeling of stress and overwhelm and linking that to a different sensation. So for her, the original sensation was contracting. This then converts it to expansion. And I asked her, was there a time in her life that she felt that she could, feel resourceful even when she was stressed and overwhelmed? And she could recall a moment. And in that moment, she had a different sensation. She had this kind of warm, almost like blanket feeling going down her back, almost like a cloak. So what you're going to hear here is me getting her to associate into the negative feeling, the destructive feeling of stress, disassociate from that, and then replace it with a more expansive, useful feeling, so that she creates a new belief system that smoking is no longer necessary for her, And in future sessions, we're going to work on this idea that not only is smoking not helping her to reduce stress, but actually a lot of the stress that she has in her life is probably down to this kind of addiction. So if you're listening to this and maybe you are an addict of some kind, could be drink, drugs, cigarettes, whatever it might be, cocaine. I work a lot with people in that area. Two key things that you can do. One, you can check out my website, adamcox.co.uk, and there's free downloads that you can get from there just by using the coupon code FREE. But with addictions, it has to be customized, really, because generic stuff is made for general people or for other people, as in this recording as well. Whereas if I'm working with someone individually, I need to find out what their triggers are, what their belief systems are, what needs are being met with the behavior in their world, so we can then change that. So if that feels like you, that actually you've got addictions that you don't want anymore, whether it's smoking or anything else, there will be a link nearby where you can book a free 30-minute consultation call. And on that consultation call, I can explain how I would work, what my costs are, what the process are, answer any questions just to see if there's a fit between what you're looking for and what I offer. But for now, though, find a quiet place where you won't be disturbed, relax, and enjoy this session. Take a deep breath in. And as you breathe in a resourceful feeling of relaxation. And as you exhale, allow your eyelids to close. And in doing so, become aware of how much more of your attention you can give to the sound of my voice. Continuing to breathe in and breathe out. That's right. I want you to use the power of your imagination to imagine that as you breathe in, you're breathing in a sense of resourcefulness. And I want you to perceive the meaning of resourcefulness to just mean that all of the helpful feelings that would be useful for you. Perhaps resourcefulness for you means motivation, discipline, self-control. Maybe resourcefulness means the ability to relax and release that tension. I want you to imagine that your body is kind of like a glass, and I want you to imagine that the glass could be a glass of a coloured liquid. And I want you to imagine that as you breathe in, you're breathing in a resourceful feeling, and I want you to imagine a colour that represents resourcefulness, maybe a bright colour. And then as you exhale, I want you to imagine that anything that is no longer resourceful for you is leaving your body. Perhaps stress, perhaps tension, perhaps worries, leaving your body. And still hold an image in your mind of a coloured glass. And maybe to begin with, that coloured glass is filled with a liquid of the colour that represents tension, stress and worries and overwhelm. But as you breathe in that resourceful feeling of relaxation, I want you to imagine that it's almost like tipping in one colour and removing another colour, and slowly but surely the colour of that liquid in that glass is changing from those disempowering emotions to something more resourceful. Breathe in that warm, vibrant colour of resourcefulness and notice that tension is leaving your body. Stress and worries are leaving your body. In fact, you can imagine as you exhale, see that darker colour leaving your body in your outward breath. Breathing in a feeling of resourcefulness and exhaling feelings of tension, stress and worries. And allow tension in your neck to be released. Your jaw, your face, Release that tension now. As you breathe, notice that you can start to breathe deeper there in your diaphragm, taking longer, deeper breaths, still being aware that the color of that glass is changing. The liquid is changing, becoming brighter, reflecting that more resourceful color that's now within you. And at the point where you feel much more resourceful, much more able to cope, feeling that the choices you make are the choices you want, just let me know by nodding your head. That's right. And I want you to get a sense, as you breathe in, breathe out, that you're going into a deeper level of relaxation, a feeling perhaps of being able to cope. I want you to imagine that the definition of being able to cope is that you can just handle whatever life throws at you. And I want you to try and recall the last time you died of stress. And then think about how many times you've experienced stress in your life. And maybe you've experienced stress anything from 2 or 3 times a day to maybe 10 or 20 times a day of different intensities, and not once has stress overwhelmed you to the point that you died. There are 365 days every year. Years and years of living multiplied. There's 365 days of stress, even if there was just 2 or 3 stressful occasions per day. That is 1,000 stressful events. Over decades, that would be 10,000 stressful events. And yet, you're still here, which means that you have evidence that if the definition of coping is getting through whatever life throws at you, whatever stress and overwhelming things, you can still wake up the next morning and still carry on. Is that not coping? And you might not be coping as well as you want to, but just know that it is still coping. Therefore, you can have a definition of coping, which is falling down and getting back up. And that definition of emotional resilience means that you can do that with no help from anything external. Just picking yourself back up means that you're wiser for that fall. I want you to get a sense that life has problems. Life has stressful moments. But what if these moments are designed to challenge us to evolve? That whenever we figure out how to solve a problem, we're better equipped to solve anything similar to that problem in the future. What if life isn't meant to be easy, but meaningful? I want you to get a sense that you've dealt with some very challenging moments in your life, and I want you to think back to a time where you felt so stressed, so overwhelmed, that it almost felt like there was a pressure there in your chest. And when you can recall a moment like that, just let me know by nodding your head. I want you to raise your hand and show me how that pressure feels like it's growing right there in that location. That's right. I want you to get a sense that this feeling of pressure there in that location, squeezing, tightening, is something that has been a trigger for you to do something. And I want you to imagine that there with your hand, pulling it out from the inside and pull it out of your chest, so I can almost feel like it's being held in front of you. Now that part had a positive intention to take something seriously, to do something. But I want you to get a sense that it has served its purpose. Because you have multiple ways of dealing with stressful events, and this tightening, squeezing sensation has served its purpose. You don't need it anymore. And I want you to feel like this is no longer necessary for you. I want you to imagine that sensation is almost like a ball of snow. I want you to imagine it crumbling there in your hands. And as it does so, feel immediately that feeling disappear. And instead, I want you to replace it with a feeling of something expanding. In life, things either contract or they expand. And I want you to make an image of something in your mind, of something that expands. Maybe it's a flower bud that is starting to bloom. Maybe it's something that is growing and expanding wider. When you can think of something that represents expansion, just let me know by nodding your head. Picture that thing. Imagine it small and then getting wider, and imagine that stress fuels this expansion. I want you to place it back in your chest, in the exact same location, but with a new idea. An idea that, what if stress expanded your way of thinking and opened up your mind to all the different ways in which you could handle this situation? When things contract, you reduce options, limiting to doing poor quality ideas that don't really work anyway. When you expand, you open your mind to the possibility of all the different options available to you. As you feel that expansion there in the center of your chest, imagine that there is a cape, a blanket if you like, starting from your shoulders and going down the back of your body. I want you to shift your posture and your breathing to like that of a superhero. I want you to imagine that a superhero, when a challenge comes their way, don't they smile? Knowing that they have all the resources to cope with something challenging for mere mortals, but for them it's well within their grasp. That feeling of, I can handle this, I can cope. I want you to get a sense that stress is now unlocking your potential. They say that the difference between a rock of coal and a diamond is pressure. The pressure creates the value inside it. And from this point forward, I want you to entertain the idea that stressful things and overwhelming things actually bring out the best in you. Bring out your ability to see the bigger picture. To step away and identify the different options that you have. Sometimes it might be a trigger for a moment of reflection, just you with your thoughts, breathing slowly and getting a sense of what I'd like to do in this situation. Imagine going back to that same thing that created that feeling of contraction there in your chest, and imagine this time something small there in your chest feels like it's expanding, that you can feel that cape, that cloak down the back of your neck, unlocking a feeling of immense resourcefulness within you, feeling that I've got this, I can handle this. And in doing so, notice that what you used to desire and feel like you need is no longer there anymore. In fact, there's a feeling of freedom. And with that feeling of freedom, you feel like stress is disappearing. And holding on to that feeling, I want you to feel like you're back in the present. As I count from 1 to 10 to awaken you, you will awaken feeling resourceful, feeling optimistic, and feeling that you have unlocked an ability to perceive stressful events differently. Starting to count to awaken you. 1, 2, 3, waking up. 4, 5, 6, more alert. 7, 8, open your eyes, open your eyes. 9, 10, wide awake, wide awake, wide awake.
Thank you for listening to The Hypnotist with Adam Cox, the show that gives you inside access to cutting-edge hypnosis with real clients facing genuine issues. To automatically receive the latest episodes, please subscribe. If you'd like to support the show, please share this episode with just one friend you think it could help. And if this episode helped you, please leave us a 5-star review.